few weeks ago at church, a little old lady stood up and praised God very fervently because he had provided a parking space close to the door when she had been running late for her hair appointment. My eldest daughter asked me, "Dad, did God really do that?" And that very much echoed my thoughts. I was finding it very difficult to believe that God would step in to give her a parking spot for a hair appointment and yet somehow not provide food for Christians who are starving around the world, or not step in to curve the bullets away from the kids who get shot in the street. I told my daughter, no, I didn't think that God had stepped in and giving that lady a parking space. That was kind of ridiculous. But God does step in and does act in history and does act today. And so she asked, well, how? So I told her the story of when Aram and Israel were ganging up to try and destroy Judah, and how Isaiah had prophesied that God would save Judah very quickly and then would destroy Aram and Israel within like 13 years. And that's exactly what happened. And then later on, the Assyrians were trying to destroy Judah as well, and God caused their army to get sick, and Jerusalem was spared. And I told her, see, look, God does work in history. Isn't that awesome? My daughter looked at me and she said, but how do you know that was God and not coincidence? You know, if the little lady's car was coincidence, then why not that? I mean, immediately I started coming up with, 100 reasons why it was different. But none of them were really good reasons, because the bottom line was she was right. I mean, there is a chance that all of that was coincidence. There wasn't huge flashing lights. It was the interplay between armies in a really messy, really chaotic time. Part of faith, though, is looking for God in the events of the world and in the events of our own lives, and then calling out and pointing and saying, there's God, when we see God at work. The struggle, though, is at what point do we proclaim God, even if we're uncertain, and when do we keep silent? Because we don't want to misattribute something to God when it really wasn't, but also we don't want to miss God when it was. The Bible doesn't really help that much in this either, because it does talk about be careful not to attribute something to God when it isn't Him. But at the exact same time, it attributes a whole heck of a lot of things to God that I really, truly hope aren't from God and are just those people misattributing it. Personally, I draw strength from how God has worked in the Bible, and I especially draw strength from those times where I think I see God at work in the world that the people of the Bible didn't even see. That's one of the things that I hope to convey in the video on the history of the Old Testament. Because I see God and not coincidence in the timing of Joseph and the Hyksos and when he arrived in Egypt. I see God and not coincidence that the Israelites were safe when the Persians took over Babylon. I mean, all of those things, I see God, but I could be wrong. It could be like that little old lady shouting at how God gave her a parking space. I don't think they're coincidences, but it is possible. It is my faith that makes me look for God in history and in those events, just like it was that lady's faith that led her to look for God in her daily life. I still don't believe that God arranged for that lady to have a perfect parking spot when she needed it. Maybe deep down, she wasn't fully convinced either. But perhaps she was more right to praise God for it anyway than I was to roll my eyes at it. At least she was looking for God at work in her life, and that itself is praiseworthy.